At one of the meetings, John was holding up a $20 silver coin when a man stood up. "Question," he announced. "Can you protect us?" "Yes, I can gather 1,000 men and women who can stop anything an attacking force can throw at us. I can move them anywhere within a few minutes," John shared. The man continued to stand and looked around at his fellow delegates. "I move that this meeting becomes our convention to establish a constitutional Congress. I, Stennis Smith of California County Executive, make a motion that we appoint John Taylor as our President of the Western States, British Columbia, Alaska, and Hawaii." There was a stunning quiet for a minute. Then from the left came, "I, William Taylor, from Oregon, second that motion." From the upper balcony came, "I, Jerry Green, from Nevada, also second that motion." Down in front, "I, Harry Jones, the newly appointed governor of Hawaii, also second that motion." All total, there was a group of a dozen people who stood up and seconded the motion. Almost every state represented had someone second the motion. Patty had joined the session and was taking notes. Peter was helping her with the names. They realized what an important step was being taken. Patty looked at her cell phone with only one active bar and read the date, September 29th, 2018. "Stennis Smith, please join me on the stage. You started this, I would like to turn it over to you to finish it," John stated as he sat on his stool. The doors to the Performing Arts Center opened and almost 100 volunteers entered to witness the proceedings. Reporter Seth Wilson would get a copy of everything that went on today that would add understandings to the pictures he was taking for posterity. He was tickled to death and published a special edition of his newspaper. This was one edition that would never get to wrap fish or start a fire. As people entered, John signaled many of them to join him on the stage. He soon had 35 looking for chairs sitting beside and around him. Jenny and Margaret were the last responding to a text message from Peter. The message was simply, "You have to be here now." Two latecomers also showed up and walked in, Admiral Wiggins and his wife Eddie. When John saw them, he motioned for them to come up on stage. Stennis Smith stood at the podium waiting for the Performing Arts Center to settle. "I have made a motion to appoint John Taylor as our President of the Western States, British Columbia, Alaska, and Hawaii." There have been a dozen or more seconds to that motion. "I have a comment," a man stood up. "I believe we need to agree that this is a convention to establish a constitutional Congress. I would like to see a motion and a second on that first. I am Jason Jeffrey. I was a professor of law at the UW Law School in Seattle." "Yes, I'm sure you are correct. Do I hear a motion for that?" Stennis Smith nodded in agreement. "I'm Peter Hastings from Denver. I make a motion to make this a convention to establish a constitutional Congress." There were 17 seconds to the motion. Patty and Peter were again busy recording the names. Jenny gasped. She hadn't been paying attention as she'd said something to Margaret. Patty had only shared with her that they were taking important votes. "Ladies and gentlemen, are there any senators, congressmen, or governors present today?" Stennis asked. Harry Jones stood. "I've only been governor of Hawaii for a few days. It was because of John Taylor's actions and demonstrations that convinced me to accept such an appointment. When John took me to God, I realized then that the states were going to come back together. I also realized that we cannot wait for someone else to do what needs to be done. We have to do it ourselves." "Thank you, Governor Jones. I agree. Are there any others?" When Stennis got no other response, "It truly looks like God has removed our past government, so we can start anew. Any discussion concerning the motion to make this a convention to establish a constitutional Congress?" Everything was quiet. "Let's vote. All in favor, please stand." Stennis watched as the entire assembly stood, including everyone on the stage. "Please be seated." Stennis waited for all to be seated. "If any oppose, please stand and voice your objections." No one stood. "Patty, please note that the motion passed with a unanimous vote of yes." Stennis laughed. "We have only done this once before in our history. Professor Jeffrey, is this a good time to vote for a president?" "As good as any, Mr. Smith," Professor Jeffrey shared, also laughing. "How many years?" a man stood. "Who is asking?" "Henry Morgan, County Executive for Flathead County, Montana." "Sir, I suggest you chair a committee for us to make that determination. Then tomorrow you can propose a motion regarding the question you just asked." Stennis got agreement around. "Okay. Any volunteers willing to join me on a committee to work this out, meet me after dinner in one of the meeting rooms in the hotel, Henry Morgan announced. How about the Constitution and Bill of Rights? Another voice spoke up. When we are completed with this motion, let's agree to make a motion concerning the Constitution and Bill of Rights. The assembly clapped their approval. Any other discussion? Stennis waited for all quiet. Those in favor of the motion to make John Taylor our president, please stand. Stennis looked around and realized the only person sitting in the Performing Arts Center was John Taylor. Mr. President, please stand. John Taylor stood, still shaking his head. After several minutes of applause, Stennis asked for all to be seated. When all were seated, Stennis asked, "If any opposes the appointment, please stand and voice your concerns." No one moved. Stennis turned around and looked at Patty. "Are you keeping an official record?" "I guess I am." Patty gulped. "Good. Please note that no one stood to oppose the appointment. President Taylor, I turn this back over to you." "Thank you." John moved toward the podium and waited a bit for the applause to die down. "If I heard correctly, there was a question concerning the Constitution and Bill of Rights." John looked around. "Long ago, when I became a Marine, I vowed to our former government to uphold and defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I do not see any reason to change that now. Do I hear a motion?" Stennis Smith stood. "I, Stennis Smith of Modoc County, California, makes a motion to adopt, uphold, and defend our Constitution and Bill of Rights against all enemies, foreign and domestic." Again, many others followed Stennis in their voicing agreement to second the motion. Any discussion? There was quiet until a question. "Does the motion include all 27 amendments to the Bill of Rights?" "Yes," came from Stennis. "If you agree with the motion to adopt, uphold, and defend the Constitution and Bill of Rights, including all 27 amendments of the former USA as ours, please stand," John advised. Jenny took John's hand and he leaned down, and they kissed as she stood next to him. "Please be seated." When all were, "Is there anyone that opposes the previous motion? Please stand." John saw no movement. He turned to Patty. "We see no opposition to the motion to adopt the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights, with all 27 amendments as our own." John turned back to the assembly. "Will all the county executives and officers of regional districts stand?" About 300 people stood. "When I am sworn in as your president, I would like to appoint you as temporary members to the new House of Representatives until elections can be completed. You are going to be the legislative branch until elected individuals can replace you. Please be seated." Everyone clapped their approval. "Apart from Professor Jeffrey, do we have any other individuals with law degrees in the assembly? If yes, please stand." The professor and 2 other men stood. "Gentlemen, can you meet with me? I want to discuss with you short-term appointments as our Supreme Court justices until the electorate has had a chance to meet and take their positions as senators and representatives in our new government." John got agreement from all 3. "What I want to do right this minute is to return us to the agenda that I had set up for this morning. I plan to pay each of you 11 ounces of gold and 25 ounces of silver. This is what we are defining as 1 year of pay. I endow our new government with 40 million ounces of gold and 400 million ounces of silver." John looked up at the control booth. "Is this being recorded?" When he got the thumbs up, "Patty will be the one to transcribe it." John looked around and then proceeded. "I invite everyone to the stadium Saturday afternoon. I will present you with an acceptance speech that I pray is worthy of what we need to accomplish. Volunteers go into action." John turned and hugged Jenny. 16 tables were set up, 8 inside the center and 8 outside the center in the hallway. The reps were having their information taken, home, position, education, and the number of people in their area. Every rep got a nice buffalo hide bag, 11 gold coins, and 25 silver coins. Tomorrow afternoon, they would receive a document promising to back their greenbacks with gold or silver at 10% for 90 days. John realized it would create 2 monetary systems. As the greenbacks disappeared, gold and silver would be established at the OMIC rate. It would also explain that when a county government proclaims a county bank, there would be sent to be on deposit a minimum of a portion of the gold and silver by the new United States government. The remainder of the gold and silver would be held in the government's coffers in Omak as a reserve. John got on the mic once more. The people have butchered a buffalo for us. Our lunch today is going to feature buffalo steaks. They are being offered behind the hotel for those that are getting tired of fish. We will also have a buffalo stew as an option today. We will also have a few salmon on the barbecue for those who are interested. Best food I've had in a long time. Thank you, President John. A voice rang out and a lot of agreement and clapping followed it. John, Jenny, Johnny, and Teresa met with General Williams, Chief Frank, and Admiral Wiggins. Peter and Patty also stayed on the stage. Congratulations, President Taylor. General Chet Williams laughed as he saw the sour look on John's face. Okay. Can I join you? Harry Jones from Hawaii asked. Yes, welcome to the formation of the new United States, Harry. Jenny laughed. Didn't see that coming. John shared. When I first met you, God told me you were to become president. The Admiral looked puzzled. I knew it would happen, but not how it would happen. John shook his head. The Admiral smiled. I did. Patty smiled. Got the sense not to tell. I did too. Thank you, John. Now Hawaii can become legitimate again. Harry Jones shared. China has been trying to annex us again. This will help in giving them one loud no. John looked to the Admiral and got a nod that this was correct. What is the status of Japan and Taiwan? Japan is gone except for the northernmost island, Hokkaido. China is a mess. Tens of millions of dead from the earthquakes. We believe the government of Taiwan and much of the landmass is also gone. China's government appears to still be there. Many of the landmasses and islands around the Philippine Sea are gone, Admiral Wiggins shared. Anything we can do? John Taylor asked. It would be like putting a Band-Aid on an amputation. Admiral Wiggins shook his head no. I sent Tony a message that his father just became the President of the new United States. Peter shared. Thank you, Peter. John looked at the General. We need to get Spokane up and functioning again. Do you think deploying 2,000 men to the city on Monday will be sufficient? The General asked. Sounds about right. Do you need me? John asked. Not for Spokane. We need you to contact the Commandant of the Marine Corps. If you can get the backing of the Navy and the Marine Corps, then a trip to Fort Knox is in order, Mr. President, General Williams suggested. John frowned again. Mr. President, you will need respect from all of us to pull this off. General Williams whispered, This is just another step, is it not? John nodded in defeat. Does the new United States have the backing of the Navy? John looked to Admiral Wiggins. Mr. President, since you introduced me to God, I have been one of your greatest supporters. I asked the crews of the Lincoln's Armada if they would support a new government of the United States if it restored the Constitution and Bill of Rights. That was one of the first considerations. You don't know how much you are going to get paid, but it will be under a constitutional government with the Bill of Rights. I will follow you, and my men assure me that they will follow me. It will take some time to feel out the rest of the Navy. My last contact with the Marine Corps gave me the sense that something is very wrong there. Admiral Wiggins advised, I agree with General Williams. Might I also suggest contacting the Army and Air Force? Thank you, Admiral. John saluted the Admiral. I also agree with General Williams. Can you figure out who the top generals are and where I can locate them? Yes, sir. John looked up and saw that the three men with law degrees were approaching the stage per his earlier invitation. Welcome, gentlemen. Mr. President. The three men came to a stop and stated their introduction together. Be seated, gentlemen, John suggested as Peter and others brought more chairs into the circle. Every place I've ever done accounting, the job included being the watchdog for the organization. I've gotten people fired for violating either laws or the policies and procedures of the organization I was working for. I've also been fired twice. I've made people upset, made them afraid because what they wanted to do was either against the law or against the company's rules. They knew if I were there, they would end up being terminated. I see the Supreme Court as our watchdog. I don't know how the Supreme Court before the earth changes broke, but it truly didn't appear to be working. The Patriot Act was the most blatantly anti-constitutional document in the history of governments. preceded only by Hitler's legal attack on the Jewish community, where a government took so many rights away from some or all its people. "Does anybody know why the system failed us?" John asked. All three lawyers nodded their heads. "Identify yourself and give us your best response." "Mr. President, as you heard, I'm Jason Jeffrey. I'm a professor or was a professor of law at the UW Law School in Seattle. Every year I ask my students pretty much the same question you just did. The Supreme Court has been broken for 17 years. It started with the anthrax poisonings in 2001, just before 9/11. The Supreme Court was terrified, and they simply stopped functioning. Mr. President, I'm Stephen Jackson. I've had Professor Jeffrey's class. I got an A on my final paper. My paper was based on the premise that if an enemy of the state wanted to take over the U.S. government, it would look like what we saw during the Treese administration. I detailed every irregularity during that time in America to define every loss of rights. It all started when the Supreme Court was threatened with the elimination of its very existence. Just before the earth changes, I read the Treese family was worth $3 to $5 trillion. I believe they have accomplished what they set out to do. Mr. President, I'm Howard Blake. I'm a Stanford graduate. I was still in school, working on my Doctor of Juridical Science when the changes took place. Early on, I became very angry about what went on during and after 9/11. We lost many more of our rights. It was simply not needed at this time to accomplish the Treese family's goals. I knew they had achieved trillionaire status on the world stage. Howard looked at Stephen. I did not realize they had reached $3 to $5 trillion. I agree with what has been said and am willing to bet that the three of us could fill a week-long conference of what went on and what needed to be corrected. In a way, this is a godsend and to be able to start fresh again. I also found a report that Papa Treese was found in the schoolbook depository building on the day of Kent's assassination in 1963. I have also read Treese was the paymaster for that event. This was not a single act, but a planned war on the American public to eliminate government by the people, for the people. Gentlemen, have any of you been members of the local or state bar associations? John asked. They responded in order. No. No. Yes, it was early on in my career, and then with the whole 9/11 issue, I became so very angry at the inaction by those professional bodies that I resigned as a form of protest. Professor Jeffrey shared, I would love to start an American version of the Bar Association devoted to the Constitution of the U.S. in alignment with the President. It would require the members to swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution and Bill of Rights. We need the legal body of America to stand in one voice, loud and clear when a bill comes before Congress that erodes the rights of the American people. Thank you, Professor. I'm hearing what I wanted to hear. John looked around the circle. What does everybody think? I think they understand the issues. They need to be fully trained on, so they fear no one. Jenny advised. Mr. President, what was the Bar Association question about? Johnny asked his dad with a great big smile. Members of the bar can use the title Esquire. Esquire is the lowest level of royalty in alignment with the English crown. Originally, the 13th Amendment was intended to prevent lawyers who were members of the bar to be part of our government. John shared, the lawyers saw an opportunity and killed it in its final stages. The 13th Amendment had gotten enough states to ratify it. But during the time of ratification, 2 more states were added, causing the issue to be muddied. It went before the Supreme Court and the issue went out. And soon we were into the Civil War. The 13th Amendment became the abolition of slavery in 1865. The President is correct. It is like being married to one woman and having a lifelong affair. That was the second reason I resigned from the bar. Can you imagine losing a child with your wife? Your mistress might not care and even be happy about the news. U.S. citizens lose rights and freedoms. The bar associations didn't do anything. They may have even been happy. Professor Jeffries shared, all of our freedoms and rights are based on the Magna Carta that was written in 1215 AD. The U.S. Bill of Rights has more of the Magna Carta than the entire British legal system. Governments erode the rights of their people like a river might erode its banks over time. The Patriot Act was a major offense on our Constitution, and the Treese family knew if the Supreme Court was functioning at 100%, it would throw out the Patriot Act within a few years. Thus, the threat of the attack on the Supreme Court reducing their effectiveness in a major way. Johnny smiled at his dad. It was a smile of respect. John caught the smile and winked at his son. Gentlemen, I find you very acceptable, both short-term and long-term. I will introduce you in the morning to the assembly. Please prepare a 3 to 5 minute resume that you can share with the assembly. Professor Jeffrey, I am going to appoint you as our temporary Chief Justice. Thank you, Mr. President. Professor Jeffrey smiled. Gentlemen, what are your circumstances? Where are your loved ones? John asked. Howard Blake responded first. I'm single. My horse is borrowed. I have stuff in a fifth-wheel travel trailer in Southern Oregon. I will need some help to get that stuff to Omak. Stephen chimed in. I've lost all of my possessions. I have my life, my education. I thank you, sir. I have a pocket full of money. I am here ready to learn and to serve. I'm in total agreement with what we are doing. My RV is out of fuel in DeSoto, Washington. Not too far from here, maybe 15 miles towards Spokane. My wife Jean and my kids and their spouses are all still there. Funny story, but when we were looking for an RV, we measured everything to make sure it would hold my law library. But after all that effort, we ended up buying a trailer and put all of my books in there. Everyone laughed. It would be nice to have my family here for this afternoon. Professor Jeffries shared, I've been preparing for this all my life. Now it makes sense. I am pleased to have Stephen and Howard join me. I believe we have the basis for a really good team. John looked at Peter and got a nod. They're on the way, Professor. Those little cars, Howard asked, are they being sold close by? Yes, we have a dealership here in town, John announced. As had become a habit, John recited the prices but got the sense they weren't right. He made a note to find out what was going on. He looked to Johnny and got a frown. What, Johnny? The prices have been changed. Johnny made a sour face. If I tell you, I lose my job. Mr. John Taylor Jr., I want to inform you that I plan on nominating you as my vice president. John smiled. He then looked at the date on his phone and started laughing. What is it, Dad? Johnny asked. Today is September 29th. I got out of the Marine Corps 49 years ago today. We've been here for almost 3 weeks. I can hardly wait to see what the next 3 weeks look like. John bemoaned, shaking his head. He's in there on the stage. The group heard a voice from the doorway. Ex-officer Bill McCormick and his wife Nancy came in all excited. We hear that the visitors are going to make you president, Mr. Taylor, Nancy said. It looks that way. John laughed. We've already had a vote on it. M&M is on the way, Nancy gushed as she patted her tummy. Congratulations, you two. John stood and shook hands with Bill and gave Nancy a hug, followed by Johnny, Teresa, and Jenny, and many others. Would you like to have an assistant, Mr. President? Nancy asked as she patted her tummy again. John looked over at Patty, who nodded her head, smiled, and pointed at Nancy. I guess we do. John laughed. That night, Peter was finishing up one of his classes as he got a feeling something wasn't right, so he swung by the hotel. As he entered, he could hear the argument. 4 years, no 6 years, I hate elections. Let's make it 8 years. Back and forth, men yelling at each other rang out from one of the meeting rooms. Peter saw Brad and April behind the desk. He didn't even stop to chat. They have been going at it for hours. April shared, we're about to kick them out. If I can get them to quiet down, can we continue to work on the issues? Peter asked. Brad nodded, then held up his finger to his lips. Peter nodded, letting Brad know he understood. He checked his cell phone and was pleased to see the system was up. Patty? Yeah, honey, Patty answered. Are you on your way home? I'm at the hotel. I'm going to join one of the committees working on the term length for John. Peter shared. I'll be right there. Patty giggled. Peter was still holding his phone when Patty kissed him on the cheek. Hi, honey. Peter hugged his wife and kissed her for several seconds. He turned to Brad and April. Is there still chowder on the barbecue? George is running it all night. If we are short of something, let George know and he'll take care of it, April shared. Thank you, April. Peter turned to Patty. Ready to enter the lion's den? Sure. Patty giggled as she grabbed Peter's hand as they headed for the noisy conference room. As they entered, they were met with, This is a closed meeting. Who are you? Henry Morgan asked in a demanding voice. I am Peter Adams, and this is my wife, Patty. Patty took the official record today at the meeting. We come as friends and as Americans. I'm only 16, but I love American history. The hotel is going into quiet time, so we need to keep things down a bit, or we are going to be asked to leave. Henry Morgan was going to say something when he was stopped by the man sitting next to him. Are you with the Minutemen? Are you the Peter? One of the other members asked. Yes, about the Minutemen. I'm not sure I understand the Peter. Peter laughed. Another member jumped in. Henry, you need to back down. This is Peter. He can gather 1,000 that wear the black lanyard and another 1,000 that wear the red. Henry, if we are attacked from outside our borders, this young man would be standing between us and the enemy and have enough power to move the moon. I say let him join us. We're not making any progress. Maybe he has some better ideas. Peter looked around. I'm hungry. Doesn't the Constitution have term limits for the president? Everyone I've talked to feels the system needs a major change. If we don't change it here and now, it will become impossible as time passes. Henry Morgan sighed with exasperation. Peter thought for a moment. Let me put this on the table. 20-year limits. Every January of all even years, the House does a job review on the president. If the president gets less than 50% okay of the House vote on his review, that triggers an election the first Tuesday. In November of that same year, the people have the final say. That just might work, Henry thought aloud. If we have a good leader, we can keep them in office for 20 years or until they resign. If not, we can throw an election at them every 2 years until we get somebody else in there. One of the other members, the 22nd Amendment, says a president cannot run for a third term. So every January of even years, Congress gives a job rating. We could have a bad president out by the end of 4 years. A good president would not have to face re-election. I suggest this body is responsible for all members of our government that are appointed. The appointees get reviewed every January of the even years. Justices, cabinet members, and ambassadors included. If they fail the review, they are removed from the appointment. Peter shared, or forced to stand for re-election. You just gave this body a tremendous amount of power. Harry Morgan frowned. As he thought about it, he started smiling. I like it. Discussion? Let's include that all appointees by both the House and the Senate have to be reviewed by the House every 2 years during January in the even-numbered years, one of the members suggested. This became the new Peter principle. Do your job or you will be removed or forced to be re-elected. Patty and Peter went and had some chowder. They hadn't even been at the committee meeting long enough to sit down. Another meeting was taking place with Johnny Taylor, with his Aunt Sherry and Uncle Samuel, while Peter and Patty were finishing up theirs. After dinner, Johnny stopped by the home of his aunt and uncle. Hi, Uncle Samuel. We need to talk. Come on in. How did things go today? Samuel opened the door and let Johnny in. Very well. Dad was voted in as the new president. The Assembly also made this meeting the Constitutional Convention to form a new government. Johnny saw smiles form on his aunt and uncle's faces. The delegates are from the western states, including Hawaii, Alaska, and British Columbia. Man, we're back together again. I would have given that a chance of 1 in 100 for that to happen. Samuel looked up. Thank you, God. What else is there, Johnny? Sherry asked. Dad did not know about the change in prices on the cars. Johnny had never seen his aunt get so mad so quickly. She jumped up and beat on her husband. What on earth do you think you're doing? You lied to me. You told me John agreed to the changes. I can explain. Samuel finally was able to lower his arms. If our sales drop to 3 cars per week under the old prices, we will lose money. If we sell 14 cars in a month, we will make money. What are you thinking? Sherry was still mad as a hornet. Our lowest sales week was 23 cars. Sherry looked to Johnny. Anything else? He took commissions on top of his salary for the cars he sold, and yet had me work for daily wages. Johnny shared. Where is it? Sherry asked her husband. In the gun safe, Samuel whispered so quietly no one could hear. Where is it? Sherry asked again a little bit louder. In the gun safe, Samuel spat out. Sherry sat down and let out a growl. Johnny handed Sherry 2 copies of a list of 87 individuals listing dates, names, amounts paid, and overages. The total was $8,700. You've put both my and my father's careers as politicians in jeopardy. This could be a major smear if this dealership gets exposed or shut down. Samuel was looking at the list. Did Teresa give you this? If she did, she needs to be fired. Look, I let you threaten me, and now you have threatened my wife. If she tells me of anything you do, even give her a dirty look, I'll take you to the west side of the sun myself. And when that railing opens, I won't put my hand on your shoulder, no. I'll be kicking you in the ass to help you through that railing. Do you understand? Johnny was a bit worked up. I resigned from the car business. I expect you to give me a phone call tomorrow night to schedule a meeting with me, explaining how you are going to correct this. I think I've said all I need to. You have a good night. Johnny went to the door and didn't bother to shut it on the way out. 87 people got checks for 100 the next day. After a meeting with Johnny and Sherry and John, Samuel became the commissioned car salesman, and Sherry took over the management role for the smart car dealership. Johnny developed a flyer for other areas of the new United States. Smart cars for $1 and $300, which would include free shipping by train. Alaska and Hawaii would be handled by the Minutemen classes. The oath of office. On Saturday afternoon, John stood before everyone. His family sat behind him, including Tony and Willa. They'd taken the 24 hours from Saturday at noon to Sunday at noon off. Half of their fishing crew was in the audience watching the event. Brad, Gloria, and the others voted to continue fishing. Everyone expected this to be the last week of fishing. The newly appointed Chief Justice Jeffrey had sworn in the new president. He was the 46th person to take the oath of office for the presidency of the United States. As John looked out over the assembled crowd, a man stood up. Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to honor this day in the future as a national holiday. Thank you, Chief Nation. Let's see how we feel next year. We have a mission to turn this world into the land of the free, home of the brave. The audience rose to their feet and cheered. Later, it would be said that the 2 or 3 people who'd stayed home in Riverside, 7 miles away, heard the noise. John gestured to a man moving through the crowd taking pictures. His name is Seth Wilson. He owns the OMAC Record newspaper. As long as I am part of this government, Seth and his colleagues have the right to be in any meeting, to record any conversation, and to publicize anything and everything to do with this government. The crowd again stood and made the hills vibrate. John turned and looked at his family. They were all standing, clapping, and yelling their agreements. As John turned, his vision drew him to the rooftop where 2 men were dressed in camouflage. John got the sense that the shooter had one of those computer-aided rifles where the rounds would explode either at a set distance or upon contact. The first round had been shot. John guided it back with his telekinetic ability. The spotter's right knee exploded just as the second round had been fired. John returned that one to hit the shooter's right shoulder, also exploding. The crowd continued to make noise. Peter had been sitting on the dais and was beside John in a flash. John whispered, 2 men down on top of that building. We need to learn who, what, and why. They are hurt badly. Got it, Mr. President. Peter moved to the back of the dais and jumped down as he pulled out his phone. 8 men were there in a handful of minutes picking up the pieces of what was on that roof. 1 man had been forced into shutting his business down. He'd been operating the primary jewelry store in the area. He was known for overcharging and had 2 prices on his goods for sale. The prices from pre-earth changes were what he pushed. Many times, too often, and with several complaints, the man was warned and then closed for price gouging. Now he was involved with retribution to the new president. In our Declaration of Independence, our forefathers said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. I draw from the past to create a foundation to go forward. What else would you expect a carpenter to say?" He waited for the laughter to lower a bit, John continued, and shared with the population that many fundamental changes were going to happen. Life, that right is healthcare. As people are trained, there will be clinics set up all over the country providing free healthcare. All men and women will be free and have the right to pursue happiness. Our military will be decreased and given the task to train others, not only in our country, but around the world. Our goal is to bring peace to mankind. Drugs are going to be eliminated at the source. Education has always proven a benefit to the standard of living in our society and the world. I propose all education to be free. I also propose all outstanding debts incurred before the earth changes are forgiven and eliminated. This was met with thunderous applause that went on for several minutes. The swearing-in and acceptance speech lasted just over 90 minutes. The audience was excited, and even when the kids lit off some fireworks under the watchful eyes of the volunteer fire department, it did not dampen anybody's spirit. Maiden Nation, with the help of Sue's family and other volunteers, had the People's Trust set up a dozen tents and many different foods fixed for the 20,000 or more. Everything was shut down for half a day. Everyone understood that they had just witnessed history, and their little corner of the world had just taken a major step to heal the planet. The date was October 1st, 2018. The delegates stayed for another week. When they left, they had added 5 new amendments to the Bill of Rights. 28. Freedom of the Internet. 29. 20-year limits on the president. 30. Banks can only be chartered by the state and do business within that state. 31. Companies cannot be larger than 1,000 employees except for employee-owned companies. 32. Companies are forbidden from making contributions to any political party or campaign. Almost all delegates left wearing a blue lanyard around their neck. They also transported themselves and a few others to God and back. May God bless America. May we return to government by the people, for the people.